Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. General Zairul Islam, President, speakers, excellencies, participants, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and Assalamu alaikum. What's a pleasure it has been this morning to be here, to be part of this proceedings which are talking on the most critical component of Pakistan's national security, the water. I'll just start with what I was supposed to bring out at the end of my talk is that the world is changing and old stories are now ending. The new stories are coming up. There are more phenomenal uncertainties in the world, and perhaps a country like ours will find it more difficult to cope up because of some of those fundamental issues that we have. It's not questions of we're not running short of water. We haven't done well to manage that. There's no issue on the water. There's need to be panic. I would say in the country like ours, in case we can focus on two things. One is that we don't need to be in any panic. The second is that we need to be more humble in our views. And what I was about to say at the end is that the future will belong to the countries who have data. That's very important. I was just struggling that way would I start this talk of mine with this. So I think it has been beautifully summed up by the chairman himself, president himself in his introductory talk. And I wouldn't talk on what plagues us. I would like to take you here after, where do we go from here? Now I'll quickly go through this data what I have with me and which I'm handling in last more than 2 years. I'm not a water expert. I'm a water manager, being a chairman of the largest water stakeholder in Pakistan, the WAPDA. You know, if you look in the history, there have been 3 revolutions which actually shaped the mankind in the world. And the first is, of course, it's a cognitive revolution which took place some 70,000 years before. It commenced with the concept of the history. You go further and then you have this agriculture revolution which took place about 12,000 years before. What we need to remember is that, agriculture revolution led to total sum of more food available for humanity. But it did not lead to a better life. It did not protect humanity from starvation and diseases. The people, erstwhile hunters and the foragers, were perhaps much better off than those. The more food led to 2 things. It's more population and the pamper elite which all sits here under this roof. That's it. And then you come to the closer history, that is technological revolution of last 500 years. So this has a potential even to end history. We need to have work now that in the world we have a shortage of resources. There's a competition of resources going on. Do the technology disruption will help to have a better life or no? This question to be answered. And now we come on face to face the 2 monsters like climate change, environmental issues, which lead to the migrations, and then of course the growing needs and the shrinking resources. That's the whole thing which is actually affecting the whole world. Now, today, ladies and gentlemen, the world has a more geopolitical overtones of hydropolitics as compared to politics. And we also believe the wars in 21st century will be based on the issues like investment and the trades and technologies. But yet some of those water issues have the potential to bring you back to the territorial disputes. And in the context of India, I think the Honorable Minister has given you a good input on where do we stand. I won't talk on this here, but I'll talk little on this little later. Now, where do you stand? Before I come into this one, at the time of independence of Pakistan, we faced 3 major problems. The first was basically a political in nature, which were triggered because of a partition line which we had between India and Pakistan. This was with total disregard to hydrology and also ideology. You left a lot of Muslims other side and you also left the water storage, the headworks there. The first problem was political in nature. The second was hydrological. You had to, with Indus Water Treaty coming in, You had to shift water from the western rivers to the eastern rivers. The huge task. This was a hydrological nightmare for Pakistan. And these then engineers did a wonderful job on that. The third was economical, because once we did that, you carried water from west to the east. You had two major issues of the waterlogging and salinity. To overcome those two issues, you had to spend a lot of money, and you didn't have money. So we went along in 60s and 70s. We had water, storages. They built 7 link canals. They built about 5 barrages. The second largest grid station of Asia after Japan in Asia. And Pakistan's witnessed those decades of economic development of 60s and 70s. Then slumber. We woke up in 90s to realize that we neither have water nor the energy. Then we go in for the IPPs, and what we see today is more than trillions of dollars of circular debt you have. That is what you're trying to handle. So you had water, you have sun, you have wind, but electricity you want to produce with oil. Where do you stand now? So this one slide, ladies and gentlemen, will tell you where do we stand today. It's a very simple slide. On the left you see is the population growth starting from 30 millions going up to 207 millions on both sides. In the left corner you see is on the bottom, it's a rise of the populations. 30 millions going up sharp. Look at the gradient. We stand at 207 millions. And extreme left top, you see that's availability of water per capita in 1951. That was 5,000 cubic meter per person per annum. It starts to come down, and today we stand at 948 cubic meter per person per annum in Pakistan. Just to give you a smaller benchmarking, that in a country with 3,000 cubic meter water would be labeled as a water shortage country. And if a country comes down to 2,000, that would be a water stressed country. And the country with about 1,000 cubic meter per person per annum would be known as a water scarce country. That is where we stand. And unfortunately, if you go further down to 500, that would be absolute insecurity. So this slide, what you see, the top angle, the down angle, this triangle between the population and the per capita availability of water, this triangle has to be narrowed. That's the whole strategy. So how do you do this? You need to have more water, you need to store water, and storage alone will not do enough. You need to conserve water, you need to manage water. And storage and the big storages are not the only solution to the waters. You can still have water. This is one of the way of having more waters, but you definitely need to handle your population growth. And the strategies and the action plans to narrow this triangle is which Pakistan needs to do. Now, I'll just quickly go through the data which each one of you know more than me. World over, we have water, but only 3% of the fresh water is available to be used. And this fresh water, in case you have a look at the globe, about 6 to 7 billion people. The world over, you have 35,000 million acre feet water, fresh water to be used by the humanity. And on the average, it comes down to about 6,000 cubic meter per person in case you divide as per the humanity all over the globe. You come down to South Asia, it comes down to about 1,500. And of course, if you come down to Pakistan, you have on the average about 145 million acre feet water on the average, ranging between 19 million acre feet to going to 170 on the high flows. So this is where you stand today, coming down to 948. Now, so in Pakistan, you have the wet years, and you have even have the dry years. In the wet years, you could get as much as 180, but in the dry years, you could get about 99s. So what you have available is, on the average, is about 140-45. But the important point to remember is that this is available, of 80% of this water is available to you in only 100 days up to 365. Remaining 265 days, you have only 20% of the waters. So you have water once you relatively don't need it, and you don't have water once you need it. So you're supposed to store and save for the interseason and inter-years. That's your strategic compulsion. So with this, how much water do we have in case, God forbid, we stop to have fresh water today? We can survive only for 30 days. Egypt can for 700 days. And the world average is, of course, a lot more what we have. So that is where we stand. Now, so where do we store? We store only in 3 places, that is Tabela, Mangla, and Chashma. In Tabela, of course, we have come down from 9 something to 6, and we have lost about 38% of the capacity because of silting. And we lost in Mangla too, but because of raising, of course, we have gone up. So reduction has been only 11. And in case of Chashma, we have lost about 60%. Now, I'll just give you examples. How do the world over, the rivers and the systems store water? There are rivers, of course, that cannot be taken as examples of the overall basin system, but they save for 97% in Colorado and about more than 280 in Nile, and of course, even Indian, all 3 eastern river what we have, they save about more than 35, and what we do is only 10%. That's what we do. Like I said initially, that because our story of the water miseries is more of a sins of omission than commission. What comes to us from India, of course, is lot, but we haven't done well in what we have with us. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be fighting for the right. But what we need to remember is that we have not managed our waters well. Now, our productivity in the world over is one of the lowest. I'll just skip over these slides because I'm talking to very able audiences here. I won't even talk on the issues. And most important is number 5, the disoriented development system what we have. We have more able speaker like the Kazalbash Sahab to talk on this. He's been planning commission. The present system of development is absolutely not workable. You are going nowhere, ladies and gentlemen, with the system of planning what we have in Pakistan. It takes you 26 months to approve 1 PC1. I told the Prime Minister it will take you 2 PC1s for your government in the next 5 years. That's it. WAPDA, what they did in 1958, I'll just talk a little later. But unless the government decides, that could be the leading recommendation of this House, unless we have a paradigm shift and change the development mechanism in vogue, probably this country is going nowhere, regardless of how many seminars that you have. Okay, I won't talk on the issues and I won't talk on the Indus Water Treaty because the Minister has given you a good input, but I have a couple of points to make on this. That they have 143 projects coming up, 44 has been completed already. And of course, with that, what happens in Kashmir is you have those pellet going on to the eyes of the young guys there. And of course, they also say that water and blood cannot flow together. And what you see, of course, in coming from the Indian leadership, both military and political, you are all set to have more difficult times in future. On this, I just need to have 2-3 points to make in this water treaty. Like the minister said that India violates treaty on both accounts, facts and on the essence. There's a clause which gives them a leverage to go for the economically most feasible project. But that does not mean that you have a low-level outlets lower than a dead level of the project. If you do that, for the purpose of to be acting the sluices and discharge of the sediments, you take 35 days and you to refill it, and those are the timings which are more important actually. Now, where were you in 1958 while the Pakistan came into being, and of course 1958 the WAPDA came up. Now this WAPDA came up on the model of a Tennessee Valley Authority of USA. The basic feature was the chairman WAPDA and chairman Tennessee Valley Authority would report to the President of Pakistan or the President of USA respectively. And development mechanism are pretty refined. They had the consultants all over. They had the geotech department in WAPDA. They had the hydrology, and they even have the research development coming up. And the chairman would walk up to the president, have the project approved, and you could complete the work on time. Or these 12 smaller dams, 2 mega dams, 5 barrages, 7 link canals, second largest grid station. None of these projects was time and cost overrun. Tarbela is the only project in the world of that level which was constructed before time. Those were the kind of a development mechanism were placed in Pakistan in those days. And some of these pictures I'll show you. This is how the Mangla Dam looked like for the ones who haven't been there. Tarbela dams, and of course Sidnai Barrage, Kadrabad, Rasool Barrage, Chashma Barrage, Marala and Melsi, the Tremo Sidnai, and all these link canals and the barrages are still functioning. Now it will be a nightmare for Pakistan to go in for any kind of a successful project within cost and within time. Because your systems have decayed so badly, unless you change them, you won't go anywhere. So this is what we have, hydel projects, which we handle as WAPDA, and we were producing about 6,000 megawatt electricity in last 2 years. Before last years, my team, the young engineers, have done a wonderful job. We've added about 2,487 megawatt hydel clean energy. And in 2016, ladies and gentlemen, WAPDA was doing these projects. They were all at large, abundant and given up. It talks of Kachi Canal, Neelam Jhelum, Tarbela 4, Golan Gol, Dasu, Kuramtangi. We didn't have money. Contractor had fled, and you didn't know where to start. We had to relook at the whole thing. Regardless of the wishes, somebody would say we should go for the larger number of dams. Somebody would say you should have a flow of rivers. Somebody would say we would have a lot of dams can be made in Balochistan. Why are not making this? You do not have money to do this unless you come up with more innovative financial solutions. You do not have a capacity to do the dams yourself. In 70 years, the Pakistan has not trained the consultants to do the projects themselves. There are 7 companies, Montgomery Harza, Mont McDonald, Lemar, Fishner, SPAC. They do the projects in Pakistan. And once we talk of doing this through our own engineers, you have a propaganda and disinformation going on against you. Now, these projects, ladies and gentlemen, we took in 2016, the same young engineers of WAPDA had a relook at it. We reorganized and we managed to turn around this. And we completed Kachi Canal in September 17. We did Goran Gol in February 18. We did Tarbela 4th in March 18. We did Neelam Jhelum, stuck for 15 years. We did that in April 18. We have all the 4 units operating of Neelam Jhelum. We have all the 3 units producing of Tarbela 4, of course subject to the availability of the water. We added 2,487 megawatt and we took water to the Dera Bhakti in Sui, the desert of those areas, and have water for 72,000 acres of land. You have to increase your storage. Like I said before, other than storage capacity, you also need to do the strategies to save water and manage your water well. And you have to increase your capacity from 30 days to 60 days by 2030, and you need to take it to 90 days by 2050. Allah willing. If you do that, you could be amongst a very proud nation in the community. This is what we have. Most of you must have seen this. This is what we have. One of the few countries in the world to have a gradient starting from Shok coming down all the way to Tarbela. It is Shok, Skardu, Tungas, Chalbu, Bunji, Bhasha, Dasu, Patan, Thakor, Tarbela, Ghazi Brotha, Khodi, Momand. Gradient is more than 7,000 feet. And you could save 38 million acre feet water, and you could even produce 40,000 megawatt of cheap electricity. You could do that. Options are even much more than this, but this is what we are missing on. There are 87,000 dams in Japan, in China alone, and 30,000 of those are in the high zones of the seismic zones. Some of those countries are, of course, dismantling the dam. They are dismantling the ones which have outlived their life. So is Japan, so is India. India is still going to construct more on this one. Now, state coming to the conclusions that in case we have to have the dam in short terms, by 2025, 23 actually, we must increase 2 million acre feet water, and this could do the Momand Dam, the Naigach, and the Nolong in Balochistan, the Bada, Tank, and Khurram. I'll give you status on. The Momand has been delayed for 49 years. And the good news for Pakistanis is we are commencing this time on the first week of January 2019, inshallah. The Naigaj has been stuck for 9 years. We restarted this. We're more than halfway onto this one. And the Nolung has been stuck for about 11 years. We now have funding available of about 27 billions. This should take about 3.5 years to complete. Bada, we are in the initial stages, and so is Tank, and Kuramtangi 1 is about 70%. Then we go on the midterm, then of course we go to the long terms onto this one. This is with regards to water storage. In case we do this, we could bring about 20 million acre lands of Pakistan's under irrigations, which we are still missing. We could do that. In terms of power, of course, we must have a good energy mix that gives you more space and flexibility to have a cheap energy. And unless you take it from 40 to 50%, you're not in the word competition for the production of economic development. So in case we take it to 40% by 2024, which we can do, how do we do this? We've already added 2,487 in what you saw. And we're looking at, of course, the Dasu project is going to be, the first phase of Dasu would complete by 2023. That is more than 2,120 megawatts. And we would also have Moment by then. In the long term, you have the list which are already seen there. State coming to Jamir Basha, because that is being talked about a lot. And I had the privilege of being party to the first groundbreaking ceremony while I was a Major General in Gilgit. That's about 13 years before. We haven't moved. We can move, and we will move. We will commence construction of Jamir Basha not later than June 2019. We are in a very advanced stage of procurement for the consultant and the civil works. So this dam is about, of course, 272 meters RCC dam. It would have 4,500 megawatt electricity and store about 6.2 million acre feet water. And you hear in the media some talks against Jamir Basha. The first is its location in the seismic tectonic zones, which is, to my mind, is right. But please remember that you could have dams which would have two basic fundamental components: the hydrology and of course the geology. And these two requirements will be available to you only in the mountains. And all mountains would have some seismic tectonics effects there. The largest Richter scale we had in the area is about 7.5. That was in 2005. And we had the acceleration of movement in that area is about 0.11 G. And our design takes care of this for 0.46 G. So we have no issue onto that one. With regards to the height of the dam of 272 meters, please remember, Pakistan is fortunate to have stuck a rock under the surface, which is 50 meter deep. So 50 meter of this height would be under the surface. In case you go for RCC, and you could have the spillway inside the dam structures, you have the power station inside. It is more economical, and more importantly, it gives you an advantage of a GLOF, what you have glaciated lake outburst floods in the area. So it can top flow over design onto this one. We have had 3 major studies by leading companies from Germany and Americans, and they all endorse the design onto this. We have no issue onto this one. Well, I won't talk on impediments. We've covered those. Generally, what you hear in media is we have about 474 billion rupees needed for the dam part, and we require about more than 500 billion for the power generation, excluding IDC. So we are okay because we have resources, and we're able to do this with the WAPDA's equity and of course commercial financing, and about 30 billions coming to us every year for the dam part only. Now this dam is located on the Sawat River. This has a capacity to generate 800 megawatt electricity. This would take us not more than 4.5 years to complete. This is a storage of about 1.2 million acre feet water, and predominantly it will mitigate the flood effects in entire Charsada, Mardan and Peshawar Valley for times to come. And also have about 17,000 acres of land in Mohammed Agency, which could be coming into the command area for agriculture. And it would give 13 cubic water, drinking water to Peshawar, good enough for them next 500 years. This was stuck for years for reasons which I can't explain here, but we are in an extremely advanced stage, and Allah willing would start by first week of January. Change both ways, the way we look at things and the way we think. Because change is the only constant in the world. The second is, unless we have an accurate data, you cannot formulate your good strategies onto this one. We have to have innovative functional strategies, because you can't continue to be banking on what you get as a loan or from elsewhere. And you have to make your institution more robust, and you have to improve your research capabilities. And then, of course, our own local consultants. You have some of the brilliant mind in Pakistani engineers. They've been very impressive, and they've learned a lot in terms of the recent project which we have completed. In about 2003-04, we used to have about 20% allocation on PSDP on the water sector, which came down to 18, then 15, then 16, then 10, and in the last couple of years we had only 4%. And with 18th Amendment there, it is water as a subject has gone to the provinces. They do not have the capacity to handle the major projects. And the last recommendation, ladies and gentlemen, is that Pakistan had to devise a strategy to have very close interface between your policy, between the technology, and of course, the entrepreneur. You have a technical solutions available to you. You have a treasure of people around you who are willing to work, and I'm sure if they continue to do this, Pakistan would be able to cross the line sooner than we think. Thank you very much.